Welcome to my channel. I want to thank each and every one of you that has subscribed to my channel. Every one of you that has liked my videos, that has commented on my videos, and that has shared my videos. I really do appreciate it. I can't thank you enough for coming to my channel. I'm still amazed that this many people want to hear what I have to say. But as long as there are people that want to hear what I have to say, I'm going to keep speaking. So, I want to talk about my childhood. That may sound a little funny, but when I was a young man, I believed that if a person was arrested, they were guilty. I didn't think that people got arrested if they weren't guilty. But as I've grown older, I've realized that's not always true. Sometimes police take shortcuts. Sometimes prosecutors take shortcuts. And sometimes public pressure causes police and prosecutors to do things that they would not do if they were ethical. Such is the case with George Floyd. The police officer, Derek Chapin, was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. And now we come to find out George Floyd wasn't even murdered. How did this come about? Well, a female prosecutor in Hennepin County, which is Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the trial took place, sued her boss for sex discrimination and professional retaliation. And in all the depositions that took place for that lawsuit, it was revealed that the prosecutors knew that George Floyd was not murdered, and yet they went after the cops anyway. Tucker Carlson talked about this on a recent episode that I highlighted, but I wanted to get into it a little more because this is mind-boggling. This is a quote from the deposition of this woman that is suing her boss. Quote, "I called Dr. Baker," he's the coroner, "early that morning to tell him about the case and ask him if he would perform the autopsy on Mr. Floyd," she said under oath. "He called me later in the day on that Tuesday and he told me that there were no medical findings that showed any injury to the vital structures of Mr. Floyd's neck. There were no medical indications of asphyxia or strangulation." By day 2, the coroner knew the risks involved in telling the truth. Quote, "He said to me," quote, "Amy, what happens when the actual evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative that everyone's already decided on," unquote. And then he said, quote, "This is the kind of case that ends careers," unquote. So this prosecutor knew that George Floyd was not murdered. She knew that before the case went to trial, and yet they went to trial anyway. They tried him and they convicted him. Now, I hope that Derek Chapin has a good attorney, because if he does, he's going to be getting out of jail. Because this testimony directly contradicts what the prosecution stated under oath during his trial to get him convicted. It talks about all the pressure that was placed upon these people to tell the story that the media had already been telling and that all of the liberals had already been telling, that these police officers killed George Floyd. But they did not kill George Floyd. George Floyd died of a heart attack. Why did he have a heart attack? Because his heart was enlarged due to high blood pressure, and he had been doing drugs for so long that his body was weakened. And when he got under stress during that arrest, and he put himself under a lot of stress by his reaction to it, it caused his heart to stop. Quote, "The autopsy revealed no physical evidence suggesting that Mr. Floyd died of asphyxiation. Mr. Floyd did not exhibit signs of petechiae, damage to his airways or thyroid, brain bleeding, bone injuries, or internal bruising." So, what does that tell you? That tells you that the prosecution, at least in Hennepin County, Minnesota, is thoroughly and completely and utterly corrupt. They are so corrupt that they're willing to send an innocent man to jail for a crime he did not commit, for a crime that never occurred. Think about that. There was no crime, and yet he was convicted of it. That's the state that we've gotten to in this country. It's unbelievable to me. I've gone from when I was a young man believing that the system of law in our country could do no wrong to now realizing that the system of law in our country is so corrupt that it can barely do any right at all. And that is a troubling and terrifying prospect, especially if you're in the crosshairs of the prosecutors. And that's what happened on January 6th. We now know from the tapes that we've seen and from tapes that have been discussed in the news that the January 6th protesters were not doing anything like what they were convicted of. That one guy, the one that wore the skull on his head with the, or I don't know what it was, with the horns on the top of it, I can't remember what they called him. He was let go. He was released from jail after the evidence came out that he had done nothing wrong. But there's lots of other people that are in jail, and they're still prosecuting people. Still, 2 years later, 4 years later, they're prosecuting people for crimes that they did not commit. That's the state of our country now. It's going to take a lot of prayer to get us out of this mess, and a huge change in the government, and a huge change in the minds of the people that have power over us, the prosecutors, the lawyers, the police, the politicians. We need wholesale change across the nation to clean up this mess. As always, I pray that you will be abundant, that you will live a long life, and that you will have good health, and that God will keep you safe. And I pray that He will do the same for every single person that you love. And I pray that you will be anxious for nothing, but in all things, through prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, you will make your requests known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. This is the Vietnam Era Vet out.